Hey, happy Pisces season. Whether you were born between February 19th and March 20th or some other time of year, right now, as this podcast episode is going live, it is definitely the era of the Pisces. And so you have probably been in your feels. And so this is a perfect time to dig into your deepest stories and, feel your emotions, dream up big visions, and use all that empathetic energy around you as fuel to build trust and community. So in this episode, I'm going to share how you can sink into Pisces sensibilities now or any time of year as you build your brand and your business as a changemaker. And I've also invited some of my fellow Pisces sisters to join me by the campfire and share how their Piscean qualities support their work. So listen in. Hey, I'm Tanya Bhattacharya, and you are listening to the Campfire Circle podcast. We are all about breaking down the boardroom table as the ultimate space of leadership and instead replacing it with a campfire, because that's where we share our stories. That's where we build warm community, and that is where there's always room. I'm building an impactful business in public through thought leadership, and I'm taking you behind the scenes all along the way. So if you want to stand out as you stand up for your mission, you are in the right place. Okay, so if you're newer to this podcast, I just briefly want to share my working definition for thought leadership. And so that is a consistent practice of using our lived experience, our passion, and our credibility as fuel to spark trust and community as we imagine and shape the future together for the better. And all of that is just some peak Pisces stuff, okay? Because Pisces are known for our compassion, our artisticness, our creativity, our emotion, our empathy, our psychic magic abilities, our sensitivity, our imagination. And these aren't always concepts that are traditionally thought of as that old school leadership style. I would never, growing up, I would have never really tied that vision of leadership that I saw, right, in the news and a lot of the, stuff that I was seeing with, magic or imagination necessarily. Maybe imagination, but not necessarily sensitivity, right? But I'm going to argue that all of these traits are really necessary to this new type of leadership that will be needed in these times as we start to imagine new worlds, right? And transition and make them happen together. And so let's start with compassion and empathy. It is very Pisces to just deeply connect with other people's experiences and emotions. And one of my favorite quotes, or I would almost call it a working definition around empathy, is from the book Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. And I'm going to read it for you. She says, radical empathy means putting in the work to educate oneself and to listen with a humble heart, to understand another's experience from their perspective, not as we imagine we would feel. Radical empathy is not about you and what you think you would do in a situation you have never been in and perhaps never will. It's the kindred connection from a place of deep knowing that opens your spirit to the pain of another as they perceive it. And so what that brings up for me is that being able to witness and put in the work of humbly working to understand other people's points of views and their stories and their perspectives is a superpower. And so if we're talking about thought leadership specifically, which we are because this is what we talk about on this podcast, compassion and empathy helps us see the issues that we work on from the eyes of, not just our audience that we're trying to reach. And it doesn't just support us in speaking their language to support us in feeling safe, to come to us for support. Pisces is also the last house and the final sign of the 12 zodiac signs. And folks say that we have absorbed the experiences of all of the other 11 signs. And I really feel like that emotional depth that is so very Piscean helps us see with the eyes of many different stakeholders, which then helps us create content and just overall comms that can engage the right people powerfully. This compassion and this empathy, it helps us attune to upcoming trends that might be affecting the communities that we work with and support us in, helping them prepare for what's to come. It helps us show up with compassion for ourselves and other people when we have to deal with conflict or people who don't see the things that we're passionate about in the same ways, right? Or maybe they're even harmful in their thinking. And so instead of just writing them off, I feel like it's very compassionate and empathetic to just sort of wonder how we can change their hearts and minds and work towards getting on the same page, you know? Um, what else? I feel like this trait is also helpful in terms of not worrying so much, like being compassionate with ourselves when it comes to that, like vanity metrics and likes and follows and perceived success. Because I think if we can root into the fact that if we are able to just reach and teach just like one person through our thought leadership work, that is enough. That is enough. And we can be compassionate with ourselves about that because we understand that one person is a whole world unto themselves, right? So, moving on, another core Pisces superpower is being artistic. Pisces are just like natural born artists. And if we let ourselves there, we have so much to express. And I've always said thought leadership is a pathway towards self actualization and self expression. Even if we start this work because we want to grow our business and we want to build a brand, honestly, we often find that self expression piece is really rewarding as well. I really believe that marketing is mission. And what I mean by that is while working in the nonprofit field or, all types of fields, really, I would come across admins or different folks who thought of marketing as just a cost center or a thing to check off the box. Like, okay, we got to build a website. Okay, we got to, post once a week on this thing. But if we think of marketing as mission, because it then, what do I want to say here? Marketing is like crafting compelling messages that resonate with our audience so deeply that they are moved into action. And that requires sort of like an artistic nature, right? And maybe that's writing. So for me, my creative, like artistic outlet has always been writing ever since I was a little child. But it doesn't have to be writing, right? Doesn't have to be writing based to become good, actionable thought leadership. There are other ways to put on your creative, artistic hat and show up and serve as a go to voice and a practice guide. So, some other types of creative ways to put your thought leadership out into the universe could be hosting a event like a salon or a summit or some other kind of gathering to discuss a topic that's integral to your work and see what ideas emerge, right? Or you could, if writing isn't really your thing, but you are just like, you have creative thoughts that are itching to come out, you could host a podcast or a video series. You could convene people creatively, like you could challenge people in your community to an innovation contest and offer a prize for the best solution that, lands for the thing that it is that you work on. You could paint, you could do a comic book series, you could doodle, you could draw, like there's many different ways to express your thoughts and your perspective about the issue that you work on. And it doesn't even have to be good, by the way. Like when I said paint, I was like, well, I would never paint in my head, but it doesn't actually have to be like something that's going to go up in a museum because maybe the first iteration of it isn't public, or maybe it never goes public, but it's all part of tapping into that artisticness and that creativity. And by the way, I have a whole 20-minute podcast episode about how to cultivate your creativity to kind of prime the pump for this thought leadership work. And so if that piques your interest, I've got a link to it in the show notes. But moving on, another sort of unique set of Piscean superpowers is I would call it our psychic abilities, or I might call it our intuition. And there's nothing spooky or even really woo woo about this, but instead, we listen, like we are able to really listen and we are able to really bear witness and hold space and like hear between the lines to hear what's actually being said that's not being said. You know what I mean? I think we have this superpower of being able to support folks in feeling completely seen and deeply understood. Even though, funny enough, like we are not really great at doing this for ourselves and are often totally confused about our own stuff, but we are so good at supporting others at just like really feeling seen and heard. So how is this a superpower in terms of thought leadership work? A couple things. we really are able to hear our audience. And so during discovery calls, during presentations, during market research sessions, during the Q&A sections of our webinars, like literally anything that we're doing where we are witnessing the people that we serve talk about the issue that we support them with, we can really hear them and pick up on the underlying fears, the questions, the concerns, the all of that kind of stuff that's just sort of like simmering underneath. And so if you are a Pisces, you might not even realize that's a skill because you just do it and you've always been that way. But it is so helpful, and anybody can tap into the skill by really intentionally using that information, like taking that information and retooling it in order to serve our community at scale, right? Through LinkedIn content, through podcast episodes, through taking those questions that we often hear and the fear, again, the fear and the concern and like the inertia that's underneath all of these things, and like incorporating those pieces into our services and programs so that the people we serve can have a better result. Because if even one person is feeling a certain type of way about something, about that thing that it is that you do through your business, and other people are too. And I think another thing here is that we are uniquely skilled in being able to go underneath what's visible in terms of the issue that we work on to get to the root cause. It's like we have this knack for being able to go from surface level to starting to swim upstream and figure out like, okay, how did we get here? Why are we like this? Why is our sector like this? And how are we going to change it? And this can be very, status codifying, and can be very action oriented. And this is a skill that can help us get really clear and speak to shaking up how our field or sector has always done things, which have led to the issues and problems that you now solve for, whether that's burnout, whether that is, whatever it is that you work on, right? And so this can be scary, especially for us Pisces, who also tend to be very sensitive. But what I will say is that taking a stand about the issue that you work on is a filter. And taking a stand means that you're filtering out the people that you don't really want to work with because they are just not quite there. Maybe you're not values aligned. You don't see the world in similar ways. But taking a stand means you're also clearly calling in the people you do want to work with, right? Because they will get it. They will move in closer. They will feel aligned. And then my final little thing from me before we hear from our guests, I'd say the last superpower I want to cover is our imagination and our vision. So like us Pisces are really known for this. And I can't really even say enough about this. Vision is so important for thought leadership work. And if you want to get deeper into that vision piece and into like dreaming up what that is for you and your work, I want you to check out this older podcast episode that I did just about your vision. That link is in the show notes. But what I will say about this now is that Pisces, we often like live in dreamland. We're not always the most logical. Like we love to daydream and fantasize. And maybe that kind of goes into some dissociation from reality. But why this dreamy aspect is actually a good thing is because this practice of dreaming of a more just future helps us begin to see what that actually looks like, right? And work towards bringing people along towards that vision. It's also a great storytelling skill because our imagination and vision, as we put that into our storytelling, we can inspire other people to become agents of change because storytelling is immersive, right? Storytelling helps other people imagine a future that they can't yet see. And progress is always contingent on a group of people having a shared sense of purpose and direction. Like that's why we talk about getting on the same page. And so these visionary stories like help you shape your audience's worldview about the kind of world that they want to live in and the kind of person that they want to be, right? So this is the Campfire Circle podcast after all. And so even though we are water signs, I have invited some of my Pisces sisters to join me and share what Pisces qualities they root into in their own work. So you're about to hear from Zina Rodriguez speak on empathy, Kamilah Martin speak on slow flows, Lyrik Fryer speak on emotion, and Dana Snyder speak on creativity. So here they are.
Hi, my name is Zina Rodriguez. and I'm a social worker and an equity and inclusivity advocate who practices a decolonial and liberatory framework. As a Pisces leader, I really tap into my empathy superpower. I think this quality is important in social impact work because in our work, we hold space for a diversity of perspectives, some of which are harmful not only to the individuals, but also to society as a whole. The ability for me to harness my superpower of empathy allows me to have compassion for myself and for those I engage with, particularly when I'm facilitating workshops around the topics of equity and inclusion. Because I'm intentional about creating healing spaces for individuals to share what may be coming up for them in context of the work we're doing, the empathy I role model in the moment allows for vulnerable and authentic sharing that can be the catalyst for change. I can remember one particular conversation I had with a white male leader who shared his reaction to some of the content I was delivering on white supremacy. Even though some of what he initially shared stung, I was able to have compassion for first the parts of myself that felt injured, and I was also able to share with him what I was experiencing. I then used my superpower of empathy to not just listen to him, but also to hear the roots of where his reaction was coming from. In this exchange, that empathy helped us navigate a difficult conversation and set a foundation for continued growth.
I am Kamilah Martin, the founder and CEO of Catalyst. And as a Pisces leader, I really tap into my essence of flow. I think this is important for me because situations change, circumstances change, community needs change. And I think my ability to come into situations and come into environments with an understanding that I don't have all the answers and that I am willing and able to flow with the circumstances and surroundings and what I'm feeling and what I need in the moment really helps me be a valuable leader to the communities that I serve.
Hi, I'm Lyrik Fryer, the co-founder of Workplay Branding. As a Pisces leader, I really tap into my deep emotion and empathy. I really can't choose between the two. I feel like I have deep emotion around empathy. So I can't really choose between those two. They are both at an equal for me. And I think these qualities are really important because as a founder who is running a team of 25 plus people and employees, I really need to be able to understand my team and what they're going through at any phase of their life, of their career. And that's not always, all butterflies and rainbows, right? Like there can be darker times, there can be heavier times. And so having the ability to tap into deep emotion and not be scared of deep emotion, as well as have empathy for my team. And to be honest, everyone that we serve, it really allows us to do the work that we do. And part of the work of what we do is really showcasing people in a visual way. I'm the founder of Workplay Branding, so we create visual marketing campaigns for members every quarter. And so we have to be able to have empathy for our members who are in front of the camera for the first time, really hold space for campaigns that have deep emotions as well. So there is this sense of on the team side, but then there is a ton of, deep emotion, empathy that's needed on the client side.
Hello, my name is Dana Snyder, and I am the host of the Missions to Movements podcast. As a Pisces leader, I really tap into my creative nature. I think this quality of being creative is important in social impact work because it speaks to who I am in literally everything I do, from my branding and marketing to the offers and keynotes I share. Creativity is infused through and through. And I think that's what people really resonate with.
Okay, so you've heard from us. Now I want to hear from you. Leaving a review helps us so much in growing our reach and supporting more folks with this podcast. And even better, I would love for you to send me a note on LinkedIn with your takeaways from this episode. I cherish and respond to every message, so I can't wait to hear from you. And if you want to go even deeper, check out the show notes to take your next step.